Well, there are countless groups and agencies that have been impacted by the legislature's failure to pass a budget, or at least a complete one, and also Governor Patterson's vetoes of reappropriated member items. Among them are a lot of not-for-profit organizations who count on this funding that the state gives them each year. Now, Allison Sesso is the Deputy Executive Director of the Human Services Council, which helps nonprofits organize. She joins us from New York City tonight to talk more about the struggles that these groups are facing. Allison, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for joining us. So the impact, what are you hearing on the ground from nonprofit groups? Because we're hearing from groups all over the state that, first of all, we're talking about money that they were promised that now that they perhaps didn't use, that the governor has axed out of the budget.
Well, to be honest, sometimes the money actually has been used, but they haven't actually gotten to the not-for-profit. So in a lot of cases, the money has been spent, the services are all done, the people have been served, but the not-for-profit, when they take that money out of the budget, what happens is that the not-for-profit ends up holding the bag and ends up with a budget deficit that they have to figure out how to fill that gap. So in a lot of cases, these appropriations were made, but it took a while for the state agency to get the money out the door onto the street to the not-for-profit. And so the reality is they actually have spent that money, the services have been provided, and it is creating financial stresses on the not-for-profit agency that we all need to continue to rely on if that money is actually vetoed out and it's not given as it was promised.
So, okay, so not only now are they not receiving money that was promised and then reappropriated in the budget, but there's also no new member items in this budget. So we're talking about 2 years actually worth of money that they counted on and that money they were hoping to receive and are now not going to receive in this next future fiscal year.
That's correct. We are still hopeful that there will be member items because the budget isn't over yet. They've done extender bills, but they haven't officially passed the budget, and we're hoping that they will come back and that some member items will be put in, particularly those that are the most important ones for social services, for things that people rely on, the after-school programs, senior centers, homeless services. These member items fill in budget gaps that the not-for-profit agencies, really rely on a regular basis. So we're hoping that they will come back and put some of those member items for the coming fiscal year.
So the governor, though, says that, here's the problem. Member items are sort of synonymous with pork, right? They get equal. Right. Those two words are used interchangeably. And they become this political football, and they become actually a bad word because we've seen a lot of scandals related to member items, not just here, but also in the New York City Council and the quote-unquote slush fund scandal. The governor says, well, we don't have the money. We just don't have the money for your pet projects, lawmakers, and so sorry, we're just not going to do it. And how do you combat that kind of argument?
So unfortunately, what you're calling pet project and what is being called pet projects are in reality on the ground programs and services that I think everyone would agree, if they really understood what they were, programs that everyone relies on. Like I said, they're services that our communities need. Right now, the need for services is up because of this fiscal crisis. Not-for-profits are struggling with their budgets to try and meet the increased needs while they are facing severe budget cuts from both private charitable donations being down and government funding being down across the board, both these member items dollars being less available, as well as the actual contract dollars being less available. There's been cuts across the board over the last several years, and they're just really struggling to meet those needs. So, I would say that that's just not wholly accurate.
So what are you hearing then from lawmakers, who are talking to nonprofits and saying, we hope that there will be some movement by the governor, we're not sure that there'll be some movement, because earlier you raised the expectation, we expect that the legislature might come back as early as next week, and what's undone, as you noted, is this revenue bill, and there's always the possibility that in Albany nothing's finished until it's finished, and even then it's not finished. So there's this possibility
that's right.
that it might
Yeah, well, and that's exactly right. I mean, I think we're pushing more and more for them to get this done. It was supposed to be put to bed in April, as we all know. I mean, what's happened is actually they only passed the extender bills for payments to start flowing to not-for-profits late in June, and when that happened, they were able to actually start paying not-for-profits. But up until that point, a lot of the agencies were floating the costs of providing services and sort of gambling, hoping that the money would come through eventually. I mean, so you have that problem compounded on top of funds that may never never materialize. So unfortunately, the sector and you know, before you said this is a political football. Well, who's getting caught in this political football? It's our communities. It's the people who are most in need, the most vulnerable people, and there are more of those people, again, because of the fiscal crisis. You know, while there is, I guess some people argue that there's some economic recovery being seen on Wall Street, that's not happening on Main Street. And I think that that's a big concern of my membership agencies, those not-for-profits that are really trying to help struggling families move forward and move on with their lives and past this fiscal crisis.
There's also actually been some concern that one of the things that's in this revenue bill that has not yet passed is a reducing of the charitable contribution, the tax returns that charitable contributions can be deducted, right? Are you guys concerned also? Right. Because I know Mayor Bloomberg has raised
Absolutely.
this. You are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're very concerned because what it does is it creates a disincentive to give at a time when, again, giving has been down over the last couple of years. Because people have less money, but overall, we want to make sure that people are giving the maximum amount that they can to not-for-profits to fill in for the fact that government is having to draw back, and because the state is facing a real fiscal crisis. Look, we understand that the state and the city, are struggling right now with budget situations. That there are real gaps and there are real problems that they're facing. But we can't balance the budget on the backs of people that are most vulnerable. It makes most sense to fund those services, to give people the help that they need so that we can all work together to get out of this.
Okay, so what's the answer? In other words, if in fact the member item system is clearly not optimal for you guys, not optimal really for anyone, because it's vilified, it's politicized, it's obviously become a way for the governor to demonstrate that he's fiscally as conservative as he says he is. What would be optimal for you if they did away from this with this whole system of giving out, you know, chits, if you will, to lawmakers, how leaderships handle that?
Optimally, they would actually fund the services that are needed and fund them at a level that actually paid for the full cost of providing services, which doesn't currently occur. So optimally, that it would all be done in a way that there's enough funding overall to meet all the need that's out there, and at the same time that the actual amount of the contracts that are provided to the not-for-profits actually cover the real cost of doing business. I mean, contracts are funded flatly across the board, and the other thing on top of that is that the payments get out to the not-for-profits in a timely fashion. Not-for-profits sometimes wait a full year or longer before they're actually reimbursed for services that they already performed, and that's actually why the governor's in a position to be able to line item out and say, you know what, we're not going to do these reappropriations. It's because of the drag of the bureaucracy that doesn't get the money out the door. Some agencies have, a whole staff person or multiple staff people whose job it is just to look at the contracts and just to make sure, go through all the paperwork and do everything, that it takes to get the government funds. So optimally, we would have a system in place that is streamlined, that gets the money to the people who are doing the work on the ground quickly so that they could do the best job they can and focus on providing the services to those in need.
Well, I expect that you guys will be lobbying in Albany and lawmakers and hoping that things will be, when legislators get back to Albany, hoping that things get back in line. And until then, we'll check in with you again, and I really want to thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for covering this issue. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.